And we're back now with Perry Bacon, national political reporter for the Washington Post, and Lara Logan, our CBS News chief foreign correspondent. To you first, Lara. We wake up this morning and find that the North Koreans have fired basically an intercontinental ballistic missile over Japan. They say they're putting a weather satellite into orbit. President Obama called this a provocative act and urged them not to do it. What happens next?
Well, that's a very good question, because there are still sanctions that have yet to be enforced from the last time North Korea did something like this. And clearly they're doing this for two different reasons. One is their domestic market, and two, internationally. Domestically, they want, Kim Jong-il wants to strengthen his grip on power after rumors of a stroke. And internationally, he wants to strengthen his hand going to the negotiating table, because the talks on North Korea's nuclear program have stalled. But this is typical of North Korea's actions. The truth is, his country is starving, and he doesn't want to admit this. He doesn't want to let anyone see it, and so he's using this concessions on the military side to try and get aid for his country without admitting to it.
It's certainly going to, and has already caused a lot of consternation in Japan. I mean, people in Japan are even suggesting that maybe the Japanese may have to make a decision to go nuclear. I mean, this is an intercontinental missile, clearly able to reach their country. These people say they are building a nuclear, already have nuclear weapons. What do you think, what will Japan's response to all this be?
Well, you're absolutely right. Japan's response is critical, because they're right there in the firing line. They went onto a war footing, and there was grave concern about what Japan's actions would be. They're a close ally of the U.S. President Obama is very aware of that, and U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. They've both been talking about condemning North Korea in the strongest terms in order to reassure Japan that they still stand firmly at their side. But the international community looks somewhat impotent in the face of this. North Korea ignores international law. They ignore international sanctions. They have, however, said that if there are more UN sanctions imposed after this launch, that they will pull out of the talks. So there is some sensitivity there, which suggests maybe a small amount of leverage. What's perhaps more critical is looking at North Korea's relationship with Iran, which launched a similar missile in February. And of course, Russia, still being a very firm North Korea ally, says it will block any international sanctions.
We'll get back to that and the Iran part of it in a minute. I want to turn to Perry. So far, it looks like that the president's trip to Europe, he's certainly been well received. He didn't get a lot of the things that he wanted at the G20. Number one, encouraging other European countries to do more to stimulate their economies. But he came off getting pretty good reviews in Europe, didn't he?
I think politically this was a great trip for him. I mean, in terms of the leaders, the foreign leaders, you saw Gordon Brown I think he wanted Obama's endorsement, if nothing else. I mean, there was a lot of popularity among the leaders who really, the president of France praised him. He really got a lot of praise from them. I think that domestically that's useful too, because I spent a lot of time on the campaign trail the last couple of years, and there was some concern that among voters that America had lost its respect around the world. And I think Obama, you saw on this trip that a lot of people abroad and their leaders really liked him a lot. I think that's good for Obama's domestic support. But like you said, substantively, he didn't get a lot done, in the sense that he wanted more countries to get involved in the economic stimulus and have it to be more of a worldwide stimulus, and that did not happen. And also, he wanted more countries to commit troops to Afghanistan, which also did not happen. So substantively, not perfect, but in terms of the politics, in terms of the pictures, I think it was a great trip for him, a great first trip in that sense.
While he was gone, he got his budget through Congress, the biggest budget ever. But again, he got virtually no support from the Republicans. Where does this go, Perry? Is he going to get all the things that are now outlined in this budget? I mean, is he going to get the health care reform he wants? Is he going to get all the stuff for education? I mean, this is just one step in a very long process. How do you see this shaking down?
The next couple of weeks, Congress was out of session, actually, but the conference the staffers will start working on these conference committees to sort of reconcile the versions of the bill. And I think what you're seeing is that the health care part of it seems like something the Democrats are very committed to doing, to the point where they're talking about, and the White House is talking about, using this unusual rule to allow a passage of a health care bill without needing any Republican votes. So I think the health care part they seem very committed to the point where Obama seems not as concerned about making sure Republicans vote for it at all. They seem to not be as pushing as much in the climate change direction, the sort of cap and trade program, which some of the Senate Democrats are very worried about. But I think
what about cap and trade? And this is basically putting a tax on people who produce carbon into the air. Is that going to wind up being a law? What's your sense of it right now?
My sense is that's probably not going to happen this year, that the Congress is a little more focused on A, helping the economy, and B, working on some kind of big healthcare initiative, which of course we recall was so difficult in the 93-94 period. Congress is a little more focused on that. Some of the votes in the Senate suggested that there's some wariness of getting into. Some of the congressmen in the Midwest particularly a little wary of what a cap and trade bill will look like.
Let me ask you quickly, Lara, because it went almost unnoticed. General Petraeus went to Capitol Hill last week and announced that, lo and behold, they may actually need more troops in Afghanistan next year, maybe another 10,000. Where are we going in Afghanistan? Are we getting ready to have the kind of build up there that we had in Iraq at one point?
Well, it's certainly building in that direction, but it doesn't surprise me to hear that at all, Bob, because this comes down to one central fact: holding ground in Afghanistan. And that is the problem. Everybody understands that this is not about just a military solution. There's a civilian component, there's an economic component. That is not a mystery to anyone anymore. But what is the most enduring difficulty that they have there is holding the ground that they take. And what U.S. troops are doing is going back over and over and over to the same places, retaking ground repeatedly. And unless they have troops to hold that ground, that is a cycle that will continue.
All right. Thank you very much, both of you.